Our first scripture reading this morning comes from the Psalms. This is Psalm 45, 10 through 17. Hear, O daughter, consider and incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house, and the king will desire your beauty. Since he is your Lord, bow to him. Daughter Tyre will seek your favor with gifts, the richest of the people with all kinds of wealth. The princess is decked in her chamber with gold woven robes. In many-colored robes she is led to the king. Behind her virgins, her companions, they follow. With joy and gladness they are led along as they enter the palace of the king. In the place of your ancestors, O king, shall have sons. You will make them princes in all the earth. I will cause your name to be celebrated in all generations. Therefore, the peoples will praise you forever and ever. Yes? Why, thank you. It wasn't because I was yelling all week.
Right. I can tell with his voice when it's about ready to crump, and I'm kind of like, oh, he was at camp leading worship, doing this, doing that, and he has to preach, so let me handle this. Okay, our next scripture reading is from the book of Esther, chapter 4. We're reading from the NRSVUE version. When Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went through the city, wailing with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. In every province, wherever the king's command and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and most of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maids and her eunuchs came and told her, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai, so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called for Hatak. I have no idea how that's declined in Hebrew. But actually, this would be Aramaic. Anyway, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed to attend her and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what was happening and why. Hatak went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and charge her to go to the king, to make supplication to him, and to entreat him for her people. Hatak went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Hatak and gave him a message for Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death. Only if the king holds out the golden scepter to someone may that person live. I myself have not been called to come in to the king for 30 days. When they told Mordecai what Esther had said, Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, "Do not think that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this." Then Esther said in reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids will also fast as you do, and after that I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. If you've never read the entire book of Esther, I would encourage you to do so. It is a powerful book. Barbara, isn't this your, where's Barbara? Is this one of your favorite? Was it Ruth or Esther that's your favorite book? Both of them. Okay. I know that Esther is an amazing book. But it is good to be back home after a week at camp. It is so hard from going from a California king bed to a little bitty mattress on a bunk. But once again, we had an amazing staff, including Graham and Connor, both as cabin counselors. And I am confident in saying that lives were changed for the good, and that 20 youth went home with the challenge to make a difference in the lives of others, including their churches. So you may be saying, all right, what are you doing back in the pulpit, Pastor? Didn't Katie Valentine always tell you to have someone else preach on the Sunday you got back from camp? Because after all, you shouldn't be working on a sermon when you're supposed to be taking care of campers. Well, back in April, when we had our denomination's annual gathering in Concord, I got to have the last word at that conference when I preached the closing worship session. So here it is. Let me tell you a little bit about that event. It is the gathering of almost 60 congregations of disciples of Christ in Northern California and Nevada. And the event itself is a lot to take in. Max and I both went down there. There is a lot. Well, you all saw that when we hosted annual gathering here. It is 3 days of just constant go, go, go. And you have a lot to think about and a lot to take home with you. We had opportunities to study Scripture. We had opportunities to worship together. We received inspiring words from very prophetic voices. And we heard reports about some exciting and innovative ministries that are happening in the region. In our business meetings, which aren't exactly the most exciting things in the world, we discussed budgets and bylaws and staffing. But we also heard about churches that are stable and doing well, and churches who are alive, but they're struggling. And we celebrated ministry that's making a difference, but we also were able to be honest about the challenges that we face as a denomination. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, there was a question that we could not shake, and that is, where are we right here, right now in this moment, and what does faithfulness look like here and now? And I'm not talking about the church in general. I'm not talking about Christians out there somewhere. I'm talking about us right here, right now, in our congregation, in our region, in this moment. Because if we're honest, this is not an easy time to be anywhere. Our regional minister, Tony Bynum, confessed that she spends too much time doom-scrolling news feeds first thing in the morning. And I had to confess that I am also guilty of doom-scrolling as well. In our region, we are all having to navigate changes that we did not choose. We are holding together congregations that don't always agree. We are watching leaders retire and wondering who's going to come in next. We have retired so many ministers in the last couple of years. Ted Furch from First Christian in Sacramento, and Larry Love from Woodland. There's a lot of, even our own regional minister will be retiring at the end of the year. So we're watching these leaders retire, and we're thinking, what in the world's going to come next? We're even trying to sustain ministries with fewer people, fewer resources, and every day we're confronted with things that are hard to see and even harder to carry, as we have seen just this last week here in our community. And it makes some of us want to just shut down and hide through it all. But all the while, we are still trying to be faithful. And that's where I think this passage that Mary read from Esther finds us. Because Queen Esther is in this palace. She's safe. She is protected. She is removed. Whatever's happening out there in the streets hasn't reached her until it does. Because Mordecai is out there in the streets. And he is grieving and wailing and refusing to be silent. And Esther hears about this. Her first response, though, is not action. It's distance. She's like, would somebody please find some clothes for this man? Calm things down. Make it go away. And I don't mean to be harsh towards Esther, but I think this is an important moment for us to consider. Because this just might be one of the most honest pictures of the church that we find in this story. Because we know what it's like to try to manage things instead of face them. We know what it's like to hope things will just settle down instead of having to step in. We know what it is to want to stay where it feels safe, even when something in us knows that we can't stay there forever. And because when everything feels uncertain, our natural instinct is to hold on to what has carried us in the past, right? Right? It happens. And that's not a failure of faith, okay? That's just part of being human. The traditions that we hold, the way that we've done things, the leaders who shaped us, all of those things do matter. Those things have carried us. But Esther discovers something that we need to hear. There comes a moment when the things that have carried us don't carry us the same way anymore. And in that moment, the question is no longer, how do we hold on to this? The question becomes, what does faithfulness look like right now? And that's when Mordecai speaks. He sends word back to Esther, and what he says is not gentle. It is not a motivational spirit type of a thing. He's not saying, hey, hang in there, kiddo, you got this. He is saying, do not think that because you are in that palace that you'll escape. In other words, your position as queen does not remove your responsibility. You don't get to stay untouched because of what your people are facing. And then he says something remarkable. He says, if you keep silent at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. Now don't miss that. Mordecai's not panicking because he assumes that God is still at work. Even now, even in this crisis, even if Esther does nothing, God is not stuck. God is not limited. God will find a way. And then Mordecai says, who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this. And we've heard that line before. Sometimes that's a very often quoted scripture, something you could put on a coffee cup or a motivational poster or something like that. But in this moment, it's not a compliment. It's a summons. It's not you were made for greatness. It is you have a responsibility in this moment. Will you step into it or will you not? And here's the truth that we have to sit with. We are not in the same place we were 50 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. And we can either spend our time and effort and energy trying to get back there to wherever we think the golden age was, or we can ask a different question, and that is, what does faithfulness look like now? Because the real danger is not change. The real danger is staying where it feels safe when faithfulness calls us to do something else. There comes a time when you cannot stay in the palace and be faithful at the same time. And I wonder if this might be one of those times. Now, hear me out. Leaving the palace does not mean abandoning who we are. It does not mean discarding our identity. It does not mean that everything that we've done is wrong. The palace mattered. It protected Esther. It positioned her. It made her who she was in that moment. But it was never meant to be the place where she stayed. And what carried us in one season may not be what faithfulness requires us to do in the next. So, what does it look like for us to leave the palace? Not dramatically, not recklessly, but faithfully. Well, it might look like releasing control. It might look like letting go of the assumption that the future has to look like the past. It might look like making space for new leadership, even when it feels unfamiliar. It might look like shared risk, like trying things out that don't come with guarantees. It may look like being willing to adapt, to experiment, to learn. It might look like trusting God beyond our structures, or believing that the future of the church does not depend on our ability to hold everything together exactly as it has been. Because God is not limited to what we can maintain. And let me say this, because it matters. This is not easy. This is not easy. Esther knows that. She says it very plainly. If I go, I could die. This is not safe. This is not comfortable. This is not predictable. And then she says, if I perish, I perish. Now, this is not resignation. This is not resignation. It's faith. It is the kind of faith that says, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I know who God is. And I will be faithful anyway. And Esther, she does this knowing that she doesn't have to be alone. She doesn't have to do it alone. She calls out to her community, fast with me, pray with me, stand with me. This is not individual courage. This is shared faithfulness. And maybe that's what we need to hear the most. We're not being asked to fix everything, right? We want to fix everything though, right? Well, some of us want to fix everything. But that's not what we're called to do. We are not being asked to guarantee outcomes. We are not being asked to return to some version of the past. We are asked to be faithful together. So during the opening worship, of this conference, Dr. Davina Jones, who is basically the regional minister of the Northern California United Church of Christ, she challenged us to use our power and privilege for good. She reminded us that the church is not dying. We are alive. Do you believe that? We are alive. We just need to figure out how to be in one accord. The good news in this story is not that Esther saves the day. The good news is that God is already at work and Esther is invited to participate. And so are we. For such a time as this may not mean that we're chosen for something great, something big. It may mean that we are being called to just do something faithfully. And maybe leaving the palace is how we answer that call. So, here's what I want you to carry out here today. I want you to carry this back to home with you. Where might God be calling you, to us, to step out of what feels safe and invite us into what faithfulness requires?